Is China getting funding from NASA? Wait until I show you what I found. And I've got several other little headlines that I want to show you. So stick with me. I'll be right back. Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I found several little headlines I want to share with you. I'll get to the China thing in just a minute. But first, let me remind you that this is scheduled. This is a Fox News says that they're going to have a town hall, and President Trump's going to be there. It's the first one that he's doing like this, and it's going to be in Pennsylvania, I believe. Yeah, Scranton, Pennsylvania, on March 5th at 6:30 p.m. So put it on your calendar. I think it should be interesting. It'll be moderated by Brett Baer and Martha McCallum, and should be interesting. Some of the researchers on the board are wondering if someone is going to ask the Q, but I doubt it. I think probably not. And anyway, it'll go on like scheduled, and it should be interesting. So there you go. I wanted to give you that. The link's going to be down below, just like all of my links. They're in the description. So you'll have to like click the little triangle if you're on a mobile device, or maybe some dots, or, you know, the show more if you're on a regular laptop browser. So they're in there. You have to pop open that description first. So that's where they'll be. And let's go on. Now, there are certain words I'm not allowed to say because I'll be punished by YouTube if I do. So I'm not going to say the word, but you all understand what I'm talking about. There was someone who died, and they died at this place, Evergreen Health Medical Center. And I just thought maybe you would like to know that it was called Evergreen, especially since we discussed Evergreen in a previous video. Very interesting, huh? Don't know if there's any significance to that, but if you follow the 17th letter of the alphabet, you've heard that Evergreen many, many times. So just thought I'd point that out to you. Thought it was interesting. Here's something that we need to remember if we go back in time a little bit. Yeah, guess what? Obama waited until millions were infected and 1,000 dead in the U.S. before declaring an emergency. Yeah, And also, in case you've not noticed it, I like the picture they use. Yeah, that's probably what they were doing too. I do want to show you this particular meme that's been going around, because I think it's very telling. You know, it just seems like every 2 years something pops up. And so, is it a surprise? No, usually not. So, just thought I'd share that with you. And let's go on. We have this, which is another meme that has to do with words I'm not going to say. And just something very interesting. This particular researcher put this together, and just to raise the question, what's going on? Because Cher cancels her 4th consecutive Las Vegas show after an illness. Pope Francis cancels 3rd day of events as he battles illness. Elton John halts New Zealand gig after pneumonia diagnosis. Oprah Winfrey talks about balance, loses balance, falls on stage. Madonna breaks down in tears after falling off a chair, knee injury. Christina Aguilera cancels concert for technical difficulties. Just kind of odd. Don't know if they have any connection, but I thought I'd put it out there. Thought it was an interesting little piece of work, putting them all together. You know, could be nothing, could be coincidences, right? Yeah, they could be. This was an article that I found, and I know this is a question a lot of people have raised. Can you actually impeach a former president? You know what? You actually can. According to this article, this is from Find Law. So this is their blog, and they're talking about how, yeah, you can. Matt Gaetz was the one that said it. It led to a lot of the scholars and the press, you know, taking him on and laughing at him and everything about it. But you know what? It is very possible that you can, because this is what Gaetz said. And you know what? If wiretapping a political opponent is an impeachable offense, I look forward to reading that Inspector General's report, because maybe it's a different president we should be impeaching. Okay, that's what Gaetz said. And that's what caused them all to start guffawing over the idea of impeaching President Obama since he's no longer in office. However, there is a possibility of doing it. And what would be the purpose behind that? Well, it'd be to keep him from running for any political office. Because right now, there's nothing in our Constitution that keeps a former president from running for Senate or running for the House of Representatives or even becoming somebody on the Supreme Court. So if this happened, then the impeachment could prevent him from ever holding any political office in the future. So just wanted to point that out. It really is kind of an interesting article about how that is a possibility. Nobody says you can't. The Constitution doesn't say it. So you could do it. But anyway. And then this one, well, I'm putting this out in the morning on Sunday, so I hope I don't cause you any nightmares from it. But yeah, guess what? Hillary Clinton wants a podcast here. Well, yeah. So she tried before. She evidently had one going during her 2016 presidential campaign. And then it took a little bit of a rest there for a while. And then she brought it back when she was doing her book tour. And, of course, the Clinton Foundation also has the podcast, Why Am I Telling You This? With former President Bill Clinton and his daughter, Chelsea Clinton. Yeah, that's what I want to tune into. And, of course, just to let you know, if you have Hulu, they're having a docu-series on Hillary. And that's going to be on March 6th. Isn't that the same night that POTUS is going to be speaking here at this town hall? Guess what I'm going to be doing? Yeah, not going to be watching Hillary. Definitely not. Anyway, so I thought I'd let you know about that one too. Now, here is the Chinese connection, okay? Look at this. This person was a researcher at a university and arrested for wire fraud and making false statements about affiliation with Chinese university. Now, I told you once before in a previous video, Pompeo did that speech where he was talking about the influence of China in our universities and the states at a more local level because he was talking to the governors. And so this is an example of that. I tell you, I think we're going to see a lot more because this person came in, was arrested on a federal indictment and charged with 3 counts of wire fraud and 3 counts of making false statements, who allegedly committed fraud by hiding his relationship with a Chinese university while receiving funding from NASA. So yeah, our tax dollars were going to this Chinese spy, essentially. Yeah, does that make you feel good? I'm sure it does. Anyway, that is John Demers, who is the Assistant Attorney General for National Security. Yeah, they got lots of the Attorney General and stuff. If you see that list, the hierarchy, there's just a lot of people there that have all these assistant names. This is just the latest case involving professors or researchers concealing their affiliations with China from their American employers in the U.S. government. We will not tolerate it. And again, this is the thing Pompeo was talking about in that other video. Professors or researchers, that's who they are. And so China has got people in there. And what's really sad is that a lot of these professors, in order to maintain their status in the educational system, they have to publish. And they publish off of their research that they're doing. And so that means that this Chinese guy was probably very connected to some things having to do with research for NASA, because that's how he got the funding. That's interesting. So anyway, it goes on and says, the United States Attorney's Office takes seriously fraudulent conduct that is devised to undermine federally mandated funding restrictions related to China and Chinese universities. So it was kind of like doing an end run around the restrictions. The University of Tennessee has cooperated with the investigation, and the U.S. Attorney's Office values the university's assistance in this matter. And here's where they get into what really went on. The indictment alleges that beginning in 2016, Hu engaged in a scheme to defraud the National Aeronautics and Space Administration by concealing his affiliation with Beijing University of Technology, a university in China. Federal law prohibits NASA from using appropriated funds on projects and collaboration with China or Chinese universities. Well, good for them. I'm glad that there is actually federal law against that. As alleged in the indictment, Hu's false representations and omissions to UTK about his affiliation with BJUT caused UTK to falsely certify to NASA that UTK was in compliance with this federal law. If convicted, Hu faces up to 20 years in federal prison and a fine of up to $250,000 on each of the wire fraud counts, and up to 5 years in prison on each of the false statement counts. So, things are happening, folks. And, you wouldn't think definitely that you're going to be dealing with Chinese spies when you're dealing with the University of Tennessee, but yeah, that's what we're dealing with. So they're everywhere. That's the problem. That's what Pompeo was trying to tell the governors. Look out, folks. They are everywhere. They have infiltrated a lot of our universities, and even though they're not saying it, they are actually working for the Chinese government. So remember that and be careful. And so I hope a lot of those governors that were there, I don't know if they all were, but the governors that were there at least, I hope that they are paying very close attention to that, and they're going to be monitoring what's going on in their states. Okay, speaking of Democrats, well, yeah, the Democrat Party has a serious God problem. But we all know that because they voted God out. Let's see, wasn't that in the 2016 convention that they did that? And they all voted against having God in their national bylaws or something like that. And, well, Pew Research has done this study, and guess what? People don't see the Democrats as very religious at all. And you go through this. Here's the actual study. If you want to click on that, you can see it. Yeah, and they have the data here for you. Joe Biden is the most religious out of all of them. Creepy Joe Biden. That's scary, isn't it? Oh, he may be religious, but he's not serving the same God I do. And then the people, they had 9% said very, and then 11% said not at all. So he's not at all religious. Elizabeth Warren, 3% said she's very, and 15% she's not at all. Bernie Sanders is the least religious because only 4% said very, but 24% said not at all. Yeah. People know you can't really be a socialist like he is and also be a Christian. They really are not compatible. And I know Pete Buttigieg has said that the Bible is all about socialism. No, it's not. It is not at all. Because socialism requires you to take money from someone who has earned it and give it to people who have not. And that's never what Jesus stood for. Jesus is all about giving people things, but you do it because it's in your heart and that's what you want to do. Not because you've been forced to, not because the government has stole it from you first and forced you to give up your money for other people. That's never part of it. To force people into doing things was never a part of what Jesus taught. So, when they start in on that, drives me nuts when people talk about that and they try to say, well, Jesus was a socialist. No, he was not. Not in any way, shape, or form. And as you go through the principles of the Bible, you find out that God's the one who came up with the concept of gleaning. And I don't know if you know much about the Bible, but in the Old Testament, when people were poor, they were allowed to go glean from the fields of the rich people. So when rich people would go, they were told as they were harvesting their fields, they were supposed to leave some, little bits and pieces that they wouldn't pick up. And then the poor people would come in and they would scoop up that part that was left, and that was called gleaning. They would glean the fields. And so that was God's solution to poverty, that people would be able to work to get their nourishment and be able to have food on their table. Like I said, it was God's idea. And, that's going to be Jesus's idea too, right? So I don't know why they keep trying to say that Jesus was a socialist, but he was not at all. Anyway, so I wanted to show you that. It was an interesting article. They really do have a problem with God, and I've got to tell you that, you know, you really have to look at the foundational worldview of people to understand the decisions they make. And when you're looking at the worldview of the Democrats, when they don't have God there, it changes how they view everything. And so if you're somebody who is a Bible-believing Christian, your views are going to be colored, if you want to say it that way, by the concept of God, that there is a God, that there's somebody higher than you, outside of you, that you need to make sure, you're in connection with, and that somebody outside of you that tells you what is right and what is wrong. And so we have this absolute fixed point of reference as to what is right and what is wrong. But when you don't believe there's a God, you have no fixed point of reference. Something that can kind of give you a little bit of insight into that concept of the fixed point of reference is this right here. I don't know if you've ever heard of Frank Peretti. If you're a Christian, you may remember him. I mean, he's a writer and he's written several books. He wrote one a long time ago called This Present Darkness, and that was kind of his kickoff one. But he's written several books since then. And he did a sermon, well, it was really a speech, on the chair. And there's two parts to it. I'll link to both of them down below. But it's really a very good way of understanding the fixed point of reference. And with the Democrats, they no longer have that fixed point of reference. And when they don't have God, or they don't acknowledge God as part of their worldview, then it changes everything. And it causes a lot of chaos. So anyway, I highly recommend this. It's really a good talk. And like I said, there are two of them. I'll make sure that I link to both of them down below. Then we have this. And this is kind of going along. Oh, I should have put this before. Sorry. Oh, well, had this out of line. This is something you may have seen about, that there's these security cameras. They just found out that hackers can, snoop in on security cameras you might have around your house. And they also use them to get into your network and to find holes in them. But look at this. The cameras were also seen sending data to a Chinese server. So there you go. That's happening too. I'm telling you, China is a big threat. I think it's probably much, much bigger than most of us know. In fact, I was watching a Candace Owens interview with General Steve Kwast. I think that's how his last name is pronounced. But he's the guy that's really instrumental in the Space Force. They were talking about the Space Force and everything, and he was really putting a heavy emphasis on China is already in the works to do this stuff. And if we don't get out there, they're going to, get ahead of us. And the thing is, you may not think, oh, big deal. What's the big deal on that? Well, think about it. What if China builds all this infrastructure and ends up getting to the moon and colonizing the moon totally? I mean, can you imagine if they start mining the moon and they build another society? They can put weapons up there. It could be very dangerous to us. It could threaten, our society. So definitely something that we need to pay attention to and keep tabs on. So this is just another example of China interfering and trying to get data on us. It's really kind of bad. Yeah. And then I found this one. This is an interesting one, and this is the last one I'm going to leave you with. But this one is about this Paul, what's his name? Singer. Paul Singer is a billionaire, and he's a supporter of Trump. Well, what this guy's done is he has bought up a big bunch of Twitter stock, and he's going to try to get rid of Jack Dorsey. Wouldn't that be interesting? Can you imagine what would happen if a Trump supporter gets a CEO into Twitter that actually is conservative? Can you imagine? Oh, what a difference it would make. If you're not on Twitter, here's the deal, folks. I never used to care anything at all about Twitter. Not at all. But, with the 17th letter of the alphabet being so focused on that, and of course, President Trump does a lot of tweeting, I wanted to keep tabs on what was going on. So I dusted off my Twitter account, which, was not being used really. And I started getting into it. And I tell you what I found is that a lot of people get their news off of Twitter. That's not necessarily a bad thing because you can get a lot of news in a very short space of time. But you can also find a lot of stuff that's not necessarily true. Like tonight, there was this post, and this is a blue check person, okay? And down here, it has this video. Now, I'm not going to play the video because there's an awful lot of bad language in there. The F word and the S word, and it's just like pretty much a string of profanity here. But essentially what happens is this guy claims that he came home one night and he found in his backyard that some homeless person or persons had set up a tent and they had their stuff strewn all over his backyard. So he called the police to try to remove them, and the police told him that he couldn't do that because they were homeless and that was not allowed. Now, I watched it. At the very end, there was some person's Twitter handle. I checked them out. It says that they're not found. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they don't exist. It just means that they're not on Twitter. So it could have been that they were on Twitter and got booted. But there's nobody by that handle on Twitter right now. And so when you go through this, I'm not sure this is that valid. Because I did go and check the penal code for California, and it said that, yeah, you can ask people to leave your property. But it also talked about having a no trespassing sign. So I'm not sure. Maybe if you don't have a no trespassing sign, you can't do that. I don't know. I think that probably this is not accurate. I think somebody, made this up. But I'll put it down there. You can look at it for yourself and see what you think about it. But you do have to be skeptical. You have to think things through. And in this case, at first it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe somebody would do that. I can't believe the cops would make them do that. Is that really what California has come to? And then I stopped for a second and I thought, no, wait. Let's check this out. And that's really what you have to do. Sometimes we get information that comes in that is almost too awful to be true, and we really need to vet it before we pass it on or whatever the case is. And so this was a particular case with that, and I wanted to make sure that you understood when we're talking about Twitter, it has the potential to give people a lot of news in a short period of time, but it also has the potential to give a lot of misinformation or disinformation. Because remember, misinformation is when you get information that's wrong and it's not done necessarily on purpose. Well, it's not done on purpose. It's done just because they got, some details mixed up or something. But when they put out purposely stuff that's not true, that's when you get into trouble. And this is why I can see a great benefit if this would happen. Evidently, they've got elections coming up for the board members, and he wants to put a majority of conservatives on the board. Wouldn't that be so different? So, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but that's the story out there right now. So, that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.